All right, let's dive in. Today we're tackling near-death experiences.
NDEs.
Yeah, NDEs. With this article that dives into both the science side and the spiritual side.
Yeah.
And there are some wild theories in here
Oh, for sure.
that really
Yeah.
challenge how we think about life and death and what could possibly be after.
Yeah, it's like one of those topics that just grabs you, you know? You can't help but wonder about consciousness and what happens when we're right on the edge of death.
Right, is it just biology doing its thing, or is there something deeper happening?
Exactly.
So to kind of set the stage, what exactly are we talking about when we say near-death experience?
Well, NDEs are these really intense psychological events that people describe when they've almost died.
Right.
They usually involve all sorts of crazy sensations and perceptions, like feeling like you're outside your body, or floating above it, or even traveling through a tunnel towards a super bright light.
It's like a classic image, right?
Yeah, very common.
The tunnel and the light.
And a lot of people talk about seeing loved ones who've passed away, or beings of light, and this overwhelming sense of peace.
Yeah, and I've heard about the life review thing too.
Oh yeah, that's a big one. Like a panoramic replay of their whole lives.
It's wild how these experiences seem to happen across all different cultures and religions.
Right. You'd think they'd be super personal, shaped by individual beliefs and all.
Exactly. But there are these crazy similarities in the stories people tell from all over the world.
And that's what makes NDEs so interesting for research,
Yeah.
These patterns, regardless of your background, it suggests there might be something deeper going on with human consciousness itself.
So maybe it's not just random.
Exactly.
Maybe our brains have some kind of pre-programmed response to dying.
It's a fascinating possibility. Could this be a built-in feature of how we experience death?
Makes you wonder, for sure.
It does.
So I know the science world has a bunch of theories about what might be causing these experiences.
Yeah.
Can you break down some of the main explanations for us?
Sure. One big theory is that it all comes down to the physical changes in the brain when it's under extreme stress or not getting enough oxygen.
Right, like when someone's really close to death.
Exactly. So things like a sudden drop in blood pressure or oxygen levels could mess with your brain activity, and that can trigger hallucinations or altered states of consciousness.
Like the brain's trying to make sense of all this chaos.
Yeah, and in the process, it creates these crazy experiences.
I see.
Then there's the dying brain hypothesis. This one suggests that NDEs are like a final burst of electricity in the brain as it shuts down.
Oh, wow, like a last hurrah.
Kinda. Researchers have actually seen these spikes in brainwave activity right before death, and that could be what's behind those heightened sensory experiences people talk about.
That's pretty amazing.
It is. Makes you think about what's really happening in those final moments.
Do we know, which parts of the brain might be involved in all of this?
Well, research is still going on, but some scientists think areas like the temporal lobe, which handles sensory information and memory, and the limbic system, which is all about emotions and feelings, could be the key players here.
Interesting.
There's also a link to something called terminal lucidity.
I haven't heard of that.
It's where people with severe cognitive decline, maybe dementia or something, they suddenly become super clear and aware right before they die.
Wow, that's really interesting.
It is. It suggests that there's still so much we don't know about how the brain works, especially at the end of life.
It feels like we're just scratching the surface here.
Oh, absolutely.
With all this brain stuff.
Yeah, we've got these puzzle pieces, but putting them all together to get the full picture,
Right.
That's still a work in progress.
Definitely a mystery still unfolding.
For sure. And the thing is, science doesn't have all the answers.
Right. It's not like a closed case.
Not at all. Some theories go way beyond just the physical stuff.
Right. They get into the spiritual side of things.
Yeah, even metaphysical explanations for NDEs.
That's what I find so fascinating about this topic.
Yeah.
It really pushes the boundaries
It does.
of what we think we know.
Yeah.
Our source actually mentioned some shocking new theories
I saw that.
that challenge the usual ways of thinking. What can you tell us about those?
Well, one theory that's getting a lot of attention lately suggests that the light at the end of the tunnel,
Yeah.
you know that classic NDE element?
Right. Everyone's heard about that.
It might not be what we think it is.
Oh, really?
Yeah, instead of being a peaceful transition to the afterlife, some people believe it could be a trick.
A trick.
Yeah, a way to lure souls back into being reborn.
Like reincarnation.
Exactly. A cycle of reincarnation, but within a system that's kind of like a matrix.
Whoa, okay, this matrix reincarnation system.
Yeah.
That's intense.
It is.
So I get reincarnation.
Yeah.
But how does that tie into the whole NDE thing?
So the idea is that our souls are consciousness. It doesn't just disappear when we die.
Right.
It gets reborn into a new body.
Mm.
And this theory says that the light we see in NDEs, like a portal.
A portal.
Yeah, it pulls souls back to Earth to keep that cycle going.
Birth, death, rebirth.
Over.
And the matrix part.
Right, that adds another layer.
Okay.
It suggests that this reality we experience...
The one we're in right now.
Yeah, it might be like a simulation.
The simulation.
Designed to trap souls in this cycle.
So instead of the light being like a good thing,
yeah,
like a path to heaven or something,
right,
it's actually
be a way to keep us stuck here.
Wow. That is pretty unsettling.
It is a pretty mind-blowing concept.
So if this system exists, what's the point? Like, why would anyone create this whole elaborate thing?
Well, that's where things get even more complicated.
Okay.
The source talks about soul traps.
Soul traps?
Yeah, and these beings called archons.
Archons, I've heard of those.
It comes from Gnostic teachings.
Really?
In Gnosticism, archons are these negative spiritual beings
Okay.
that basically feed off of human souls.
You feed off of us.
Yeah, it's like they manipulate us to stay in this reincarnation cycle so they can keep getting energy from us.
Oh, wow. That's kind of creepy.
Yeah, the idea of soul traps is definitely a bit disturbing.
It makes you wonder about, like, if we really have free will or not.
It does.
Can you explain these archons a little more?
Sure.
I mean, for people who don't know much about Gnosticism?
Yeah, Gnosticism is this ancient belief system that's really complex.
Okay.
It appeared in the early days of Christianity, and it really emphasizes personal spiritual knowledge.
Right.
And the idea that the material world, the physical world...
I mean, we're in now.
Yeah, it's flawed.
Yeah.
It's ruled by these lesser deities.
And those are the archons.
Exactly. In Gnosticism, the soul is seen as this divine spark trapped in the material realm.
Okay.
And the goal is to escape to achieve liberation through spiritual enlightenment.
Oh, I see.
So you break free from the archons, basically.
So in this whole matrix reincarnation scenario,
Right.
the archons are like the puppet masters.
In a way, yeah.
They use the illusion of the light to keep us trapped.
Yeah. And the soul traps are their tools to do it.
That's a lot to take in.
It is. It's a pretty heavy theory.
It is.
And it's important to remember that this is a very specific and controversial idea.
Right.
It's not like everyone in spiritual circles believes this.
Okay.
And a lot of people who have had NDEs describe the light as a really positive, loving presence.
It's interesting how the same thing, the light, can be interpreted in such different ways.
It really shows how subjective these experiences are.
Right.
It's hard to pin them down objectively.
Yeah, it's all about perspective.
It is. And some spiritual researchers actually suggest that the light could be the opposite of a trap.
Okay.
They think it might be a path to liberation from reincarnation.
Oh, so a way to break free from the matrix.
Exactly, and reach a higher state of being.
That's a much more positive outlook.
It aligns with the idea that we have the potential to transcend our earthly limitations.
Like we can evolve spiritually.
Right, and this view of the light fits with that.
So maybe the NDE is like a glimpse of that potential.
A signpost pointing us towards spiritual awakening.
Interesting. So it's like two totally opposite views of the same thing.
It really is.
The light is either a trap or a way out.
Yeah, it kind of makes your head spin.
Definitely challenges how we think about life and death.
It makes you question everything you thought you knew.
And that's what makes this so interesting.
It is these topics. They force us to confront those big questions.
And consider things that might have seemed crazy before.
Absolutely.
This whole idea of free will, though.
Right.
If this matrix reincarnation thing is real,
yeah.
Do we even have a choice in the afterlife?
It's the ultimate question, isn't it?
Or are we just stuck in some cosmic game without even knowing it?
People have been debating that for ages.
Yeah, like philosophers and theologians and stuff. I know our source mentions that some people think souls can choose.
Yeah, like whether to go into the tunnel of light or not.
But then there's the whole idea that the matrix is so sneaky.
It is.
That it creates an illusion of choice.
Right.
So we think we're deciding, but we're actually being manipulated.
Like we're on autopilot, but we don't realize it.
Kind of like those choose-your-own-adventure books.
Oh, yeah.
Where you think you're picking the path, but you always end up back where you started.
I get it.
It's like, no matter what you do, the ending's already decided.
Yeah, it highlights how there could be these hidden forces shaping our choices.
Even in the afterlife.
Potentially, yeah.
I gotta say, this whole conversation is really making me rethink what I thought about death and the afterlife.
There's a lot to process.
It is.
It's fascinating, but also a little scary.
Yeah, for sure. It's like,
Yeah.
whoa, what if everything I thought was wrong?
It's natural to feel that way when you're faced with ideas that shake up your beliefs.
Right.
But it's important to remember that we're talking about theories here. There's no hard proof for any of this.
It's all about what makes sense to you.
It is, in the end, it comes down to personal belief.
What really intrigues me is this idea that what we believe might actually shape our experience in the afterlife.
It's an interesting concept, for sure.
Like our expectations create our reality.
In a way, yeah.
You know, our source mentions these star seeds.
Right, people who think they're from other planets or dimensions.
Exactly. And they often describe really different NDEs.
Yeah, like spaceships and stuff.
Yeah, being taken back to their home worlds and all that.
It's wild.
It suggests that maybe our consciousness is way more vast than we realize.
For sure.
And that what we believe can actually influence what we experience.
Even after death.
Maybe there isn't just one afterlife for everyone.
It's an intriguing thought.
Like a whole bunch of different realities and possibilities.
Shaped by our individual consciousness and beliefs.
That's a pretty beautiful idea.
It is. It makes you think about the infinite potential of consciousness.
This deep dive has definitely given us a lot to think about.
I think we could talk about this for hours.
Yeah, for sure. Before we wrap up, though,
Mm-hmm.
is there anything you'd like to leave our listeners with?
I think the most important thing is to keep exploring and questioning.
Like, don't just accept what you hear.
Exactly when it comes to these big questions about life and death.
Yeah.
There are no easy answers.
And what might be true for one person
Yeah,
might not be true for another.
exactly. It's a personal journey.
A journey of discovery.
That's a great way to put it.
If I could leave our listeners with one last question,
Yeah.
it would be this. If you saw that light at the end of the tunnel,
Mm-hmm.
what would you do? What does your gut tell you about it?
That's a powerful question. Each of us has to find our own answer.
Well, thank you so much for joining me on this incredible deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
It's been mind-blowing, and I hope our listeners enjoyed it as much as I did.
Me too.
Keep exploring the unknown, everyone, and remember, the journey is just as important as the destination.